need to know. My name is Michael Barber, and I'm really glad to introduce Kim Brader here to kick off our presentation today.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're really excited to be talking about social media with you guys today. I am Kim Brader. I'm with Charter School Capital. I'm the VP of Marketing here. We work with charter schools across the country for a variety of their needs, including operational capital, facilities financing, and other support services. And we're really happy to share our marketing knowledge to help charter leaders. So I'm going to let Michael introduce himself, but before I do that, just a quick little note that the presentation will be available for download after the webinar, and any questions that you may have that may arise during the webinar time, please submit those through the GoToWebinar control panel that you'll see on your screen. There's a little tab that says questions, and you can type your question in there, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we will get back to you after the webinar. So again, thanks for joining, and I'm going to hand it over to Michael to kick it off.
Thanks, Kim. As Kim mentioned, and as I've mentioned, my name is Michael Barber. I'm the founder of a small ad agency based in Los Angeles called Barber & Hewitt. We largely help both nonprofits and B2B organizations or business-to-business organizations with their strategy and planning needs. I've got a lot of deep experience with charter schools, having worked with Charter School Capital in some capacity over the last 5.5 years, and I've worked with a couple schools on their student acquisition, retention strategies in the Los Angeles market. And really happy to be here today because I think this is a really great topic that charter schools both are looking for knowledge and struggling with sort of the why, how, and what as it relates to social media. So hopefully we bring you some good content today. As Kim mentioned, we've got a couple things that we want to cover over the next hour. If you're a big Simon Sinek fan, the idea of starting with why and why social media matters to give you an idea of why you're all here and spending the next hour with us. We're going to give you an overview of all the different social networks, both the old school, if you will, social networks, and the new kids on the block, as we call them, by the numbers. How many people are on them? What are people doing on these platforms? To give you an idea of what's happening and where schools are connecting with students, parents, and their community. We're going to talk about how schools can use social media for both personal and student development, how you can do it from an engagement perspective, how you can leverage social media to listen to the community, identify security risks, tools that you can use to listen, best practices, as well as give some examples of what charter schools are doing in the marketplace right now. And as Kim mentioned, these slides will be available for you. We're going to shoot you an email about an hour or two after the webinar that'll have both the recorded version of this webinar available via YouTube and on Facebook, as well as the slides that you can download on SlideShare at that URL and go ahead and pass them out to your leadership team or other fellow colleagues that are a part of the charter school market, if you will. So why does this matter? First things first, Google likes to call this idea of moments, or these micro moments, if you will. What these micro moments are is because all of us are tethered to our phones, we're constantly looking for and evaluating different things in our lives, whether we need a new hairdryer, or whether we are looking for a new school for our child, or whether we are about to have a kid and we're looking for these things. We're looking on the web, whether it's in Google, or we're going to places like Facebook, Twitter, and all the different social media networks and seeing what our friends are recommending and what they're putting out there. And these are the micro moments when people are making decisions about what they're going to buy, or what purchase decisions they're going to make, or perhaps where they're even going to send their kids to school. And this is why social media is so important, because if you're not in those places when consumers are looking for opportunities, then you're missing the opportunity to connect with those consumers. And that's what these moments are about, are being in these places where consumers are looking for and making buying decisions and making making their reasons why as they're going to send where their kids are going, or make a purchase. The other thing that's important to understand is all the content that we're sharing as schools, whether it's photos of our students or photos of our community or of our school, or things that are happening within the school, whether it's video or text or photos, all content these days is now social. It's shareable to the masses, right, regardless of what channel it's going into. It's snackable in the idea that it can be digested in really small points of time, as we've got 15 seconds in between doing two things, or it could be that we're spending 3 to 4 minutes looking at something on YouTube, and all of it can be merchandised and distributed around all these different social media channels, 16 ways till Sunday. So that's really the why of what we're spending the time doing here. Kim, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, actually I do, but before I jump in, I think that there may be some technical issue because we can't see your screen. I can't see it, and there's some folks who have mentioned that they can't see it either.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that working now?
Yes, I can see it now, I would imagine.
Okay.
No, it went away. No, it just went away. Okay, now it's
Are we on now? Okay. Apologies about that. There's some minor issues with GoToMeeting this morning. My apologies. As I was mentioning, this is the slide that talked about.
Go ahead.
You can, okay, everyone can see the slides. Perfect. Okay. As I mentioned before, all that content that we're sharing as schools these days is now shareable and it's snackable, and we can merchandise it to all these different social networks. Google calls these, as I mentioned, micro moments, and what they mean by these micro moments is this idea that people are making purchase decisions, they're making decisions in their lives as to where they're sending their students, where they're sending their kids, where they're buying their next product, where they're going on vacation. They're evaluating these opportunities all throughout the web. Most of those evaluations are starting with Google, but they're also happening, and considerations for where they're sending their kids, or the decision-making process that they're going through is happening on all these different social networks that are out there, whether it's Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook. The point of this is to say that if you're not participating and looking at the event and being on social media, then it's a lost opportunity for schools and for parents and potentially students to connect with you in those areas.
Yeah,
Anything to add there, Kim?
I would add that, a lot of times when you're thinking about enrollment, the charter leaders at schools are thinking about enrollment, thinking about it at certain times of the year, which is good because it is somewhat seasonal. But with social media, you have to keep in mind that this is all the time. And so as a parent, if I am starting to think about what I might be doing with my child for the coming fall, I might be thinking about that as a year in advance and start looking. And so you always want to constantly be thinking about what you can talk about on social media and not just tie it to enrollment happens a few months before fall.
Yeah, one thing I would also add is we've had an interesting conversation with one or two schools in Los Angeles when parents are coming to the school or inquiring about the school. They are saying, such questions as, what's the culture like at the school? What's a day in the life of a student at that school? And a couple of schools have used the response, well, check out our Instagram, check out Facebook, check out our Snapchat, so that you can see the stories that we're sharing. You can see what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Just something that we're hearing here in the LA market. So social media and by the numbers, we wanted to give you an overview of sort of what's happening from the old school players, the Facebook and Twitters and the like, and give you some idea of what's happening with some new kids that are on the block as well. So the usual suspects, will start with the behemoth in the room, and that's Facebook. Facebook just isn't Facebook.com, which has about 1.7 billion active users per month. It's an ecosystem of other platforms as well, such as WhatsApp, which has 1 billion users on it. And you're starting to see not only just businesses, but schools connect with students via WhatsApp to distribute either messages or simply connect and be a customer service opportunity via WhatsApp. Messenger, which of course is sort of the Facebook text messaging platform, if you will, has 1 billion users per month, and they're investing heavily into Messenger as it stands right now. One of the newest things that's come out in Messenger, and you may or may not have experienced it, is what's called Messenger bots. These are automated, artificially intelligent designed computers that allow people to talk to customers and order things online. Airlines like KLM and Southwest and brands like 1-800-Flowers and Marriott are allowing people to do reservations or purchase products right within Messenger. And those opportunities to create these connections with consumers via Messenger are going to trickle down to small businesses and medium-sized organizations alike, and will give opportunities for schools to connect with potential students and parents as well. The other big platform that's within the Facebook ecosystem is, of course, Instagram, purchased by Facebook about 3.5 years ago. At the time, it only had about 100 to 150 million users. They've grown exponentially over the last few years, and they're now at 500 million users and growing each and every day. Instagram has also had a ton of different features added that we'll talk to in just a second. The second usual suspect that we'd encourage you to take a look at is YouTube. YouTube has over 1 billion users. That's almost 1/3 of the people that are actively on the internet these days. It's also the second biggest search engine right behind Google in terms of number of searches. That's really important for people that are making purchasing decisions, such as for searching for things like, where do I send my kid to school in Phoenix, or where do I send my kid to school in Ohio? The second number of searches that are being done outside of Google are happening within this network. And this presents a really unique opportunity for schools to be in this place and to be sharing video content within YouTube. It reaches a really key demographic more than things like cable news and cable network shows. And the amount of time that people are spending on the network is just incredible. Something in the average number of people are spending hours a day looking at YouTube. And the number of people that are looking at YouTube on a daily basis is growing at an exponential rate. So it's a huge opportunity for schools to certainly connect with potential students and parents. The video that you're seeing on the left-hand side is just an example of a school called Success Academies, or a collective of schools, if you would, a group of schools that's based out of New York City, of sharing great content and telling the stories of their students of why they came to their academy. So if you're looking for a really great example of a school that's doing interesting things on YouTube, I'd point you towards Success Academies on YouTube and take a look at what they're doing in that place. Anything you wanted to add there, Kim?
No, I think that covered it. I think YouTube is a really good spot. Video it's very, very, very helpful. We find that folks that are charter schools that are using video are really connecting and engaging with various audiences.
Perfect. So the other one is Twitter, and this is certainly a usual suspect. It's been on the block since really started getting popular in late 2006, really mid to late 2007, if you will. But unfortunately, Twitter's had a bit of a growth problem, and it started to be seen as a bit of an issue, not only just for schools, but for the general public. The graph that you're seeing is the growth of Twitter, and the point of this slide is that over the last year or so, in the last 2 years, their user growth has certainly stalled, whereas you've seen massive adoption on platforms like Instagram, on YouTube, on Snapchat even, which is one of the fastest growing social networks out there. The Twitter ecosystem tends to be sort of staying the same in terms of size, if not shrinking. Now, the question that often happens is, why is this happening on Twitter? Because certainly there is a lot of reasons to be there, but there's a lot of reasons why Twitter is struggling, and the press and any number of different blogs and different experts and strategists have talked about this. One, that it's really not essential. People are getting their news in other places these days. They're getting it in video places. They're getting it from other new networks that are out there, other new social networks. It's a bit of an echo chamber in the sense that, in the past, Twitter used to be a great ecosystem of interacting with people, where you could connect with thought leaders and, Joe Schmoes alike. And unfortunately, that interaction, that bit of an echo chamber where people are simply posting their content, but they're not engaging with other people's content, is becoming a problem. We also know that there's a bullying problem on Twitter. People are harassed quite often on Twitter. It's been a big, it's been brought up during the election. It's been brought up during numerous sort of key news cycles that there is quite a bit of bullying that goes on, and Twitter hasn't done a great job of monitoring that and trying to give people tools to stop that from happening. As we mentioned before, stagnant user growth, right? The network just isn't really growing. And whenever you hear that, you typically start to see the crows flying above, thinking that, well, if they're not growing, then they must be dying. It's also hard to use, I think, for the average user, for the average person, for the, if you will, a Twitter newbie. If I was to hand my phone to my mom, who's 59, and has never been on Twitter, it's not as if she could figure things out very easily. The idea of a reply or a direct message is kind of foreign to some demographic, some age demographic. So it's also hard to use. So now, is this the end of Twitter? It remains to be seen. I think what you're going to see in 2017 is somebody else sort of gobbled them up. It still is a great customer service tool. A lot of people use it to connect with brands and have conversations. It's still a great way to distribute, news, connect with journalists, connect with, potentially your government or local representatives, because they're certainly still on Twitter. But is it an opportunity for schools to be connecting with students and parents? Probably not the best use of your time if that's what you're leveraging Twitter for. Another usual suspect that's out there, but one that we can't ignore, is Instagram. And it's certainly a place where we're seeing massive growth when it comes to charter schools getting on Instagram and doing interesting things. Certainly you've seen a massive opportunity from a growth perspective over the last few years as Facebook's acquired them and integrated them into their platform. from, like I said, 150 all the way through about 500 million users. Tagging has major implications, right? You can tag someone, have a conversation with a parent or a fellow student and say, hey, you're mentioned in this video. There's a ton of new features that have come to the platform over the last few days. Things like multi-account, right? So you can not only just control your personal account now, you can also control your school's account without logging back and forth, which was certainly an issue for people that were trying to, not only have their own Instagram, but also monitor their schools and leverage it for their schools without having a whole phone that was dedicated to it. There's also Instagram Stories, which is a new feature. If you've logged into Instagram these days, these are the little circular images of different profiles that are happening at the top of your iPhone or your smartphone. Those allow you to post kind of what's happening in your day in a real-time moment. It's not necessarily the tailored, pretty Instagram opportunities. They allow you to have little 15-second snippets of what's happening in your day, or just a quick photo of maybe what's happening in your school or what you're eating or anything that could be happening as you're going around your daily life, or what's happening within your schools on any given basis. There's also the ability to do two new apps that have come out over the last year or so called Boomerang and Hyperlapse. Boomerang allows you to create these sort of GIFs, if you will, so it takes 5 or 6 quick images, and then it layers them on and creates a movable GIF. They've actually baked that into Instagram these days, but there also is a standalone app that you can utilize. And then Hyperlapse allows you to take a long video and compress it and make it shorter and quicker so that you can share it on the platform. The last bullet here is a bit of a funny, comical bullet. I always use my mom as the barometer of when things are starting to get really popular. When she first asked me about Facebook, I knew Facebook was really taking off. When she first asked me about other platforms, I know those platforms are starting to take off. And she's starting to ask me, hey, what's this Instagram thing all about? So I think that's an important caveat to understand, that you're starting to see it stretch into some of these demos that are older, and certainly will make the platform grow. Anything to add around Instagram, Kim?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think, a combination of things that schools are doing that are really interesting, marrying what they might be doing on Facebook and Instagram, and incorporating imagery that's coming from the student body. That's another way to just increase the engagement across your community. And so, having ways that you can communicate with the students and allow them to actually participate in what's going on at the school, that just gives you more content to work with.
Yep, very true. And certainly it's a place where you can, look to see what students are sharing and talking about, and maybe what they're showing off, what they're doing in the classroom as well. So another usual suspect that's out there is LinkedIn. Now, probably not something that you've considered from certainly a student retention or student acquisition, or connecting with potential students and connecting with parents, but it's the largest professionally oriented social network that's out there. Still seeing great user growth, about 400 million users. Where we think there's an interesting opportunity for schools is not only just to connect with their communities, but connect with potential board members, to reach out to potential teachers that may be, doing interesting things, and talk to them about opportunities at your school. Also to build thought leadership. LinkedIn has an incredible platform called LinkedIn Pulse. It's the single largest distribution source for professionally oriented content. So what do we mean by that term? We mean things that you're talking about, that you're doing in your schools, that may be a bit different. Maybe it's how you teach a certain topic, or how you engage students. What LinkedIn has done really well is, as you're probably aware if you're on the platform, you get any number of emails on a weekly, daily, or monthly basis. What LinkedIn does is it pulls in stories that really pertain to you. So educators that are getting those particular emails have the ability to pull in those stories into the email campaigns, and when they're logging into LinkedIn, they're seeing those stories, because what they're doing is tailoring that content to the users. So certainly an area where you can connect with a different sort of more professional audience, if you're looking to build out your board, or be monitoring what's happening with potential board members, or monitor different parents that may be key members of potentially helping your team. So some new kids on the block. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add on LinkedIn. One of the things that not personal space, but I think education in general, the whole idea of being able to push out content through the LinkedIn Pulse is really, really important to take a look at. You know, LinkedIn is always viewed as this professional, career-driven type of platform, but with Charter School Capital, we found that there is a large group of users that are in the charter school space, and so by providing content that is about your school, you're able to further your thought leadership. Not sure that it's necessarily a tool that would aid in student enrollment, but it is one that can help boost your reputation and your thought leadership about what you're doing at your school and what's happening in terms of the growth of your programs. So I would definitely encourage folks to take a look at that. If you already are generating content that is about your school, it's an easy place to just put it on the LinkedIn Pulse and be part of those group conversations.
Yeah, great addition. So those are the sort of usual suspects. We've also got some new kids on the block, the first of which is Snapchat. You're seeing what a Snapchat video looks like on the left-hand side of your screen. No audio here because we don't want to bombard you. But Snapchat is the fastest growing social network that's out there right now in terms of just the amount of net new people that they're adding to the platform every single day. If you're not familiar with Snapchat, the platform allows people to post 15-second stories directly to what's called your story, which place it there, or my story, excuse me, that place it there for 24 hours, a rolling 24-hour timeline, or you can target specific friends and just share that 15 seconds with friends. Snapchat also allows people to leverage filters to better tell those stories, or those 15-second snaps, if you will. So they have things like geo-filters, so that when you're in different locations, you could have Washington, D.C. or Detroit, Michigan, or something along those lines layered on top of the video. They also allow any brand, charter school or otherwise, you don't have to pay for this, to have your own filter based on a geographic location. So if you've got both students as well as parents and potentially your school or teachers that are sharing content on Snapchat, it's an opportunity for you to create a filter that could be decorated for your specific school, so that anytime you're sharing something from the school, it's got your school logo or something related to your school. Maybe it's your tagline, or maybe it's just some school colors that are decorated around the screen. Just to give you an idea of just how popular this platform is getting, 400 million snaps are being sent per day, and people are viewing Snapchats 8 billion times per day. This Snapchat is not going away anytime soon. A lot of people have just discredited it as this young place where younger people go from a social media perspective. But you're seeing more brands, more companies get on Snapchat every single day. You are seeing user growth in demos that people really care about, that 18 to 35 range. And also the second fastest growing demo is that 35 to 45 demo, which are key demographics for charter schools that may be targeting parents or want to share content to parents and the like. So don't discount this just because it's called Snapchat and just because your kids are on it, because that would be not giving it its due course. It's the hottest social network that it's out there, and what you should at least be doing is going out and securing your profile so you've got access to that, and potentially seeing what students and or parents may be sharing out there on Snapchat. Another one to consider is Medium. So Medium is both a short form and long form blog platform, if you will. They're trying to create the best writing experience on the web. We think it's a really great opportunity for anyone really in the education space, but charter schools specifically, because most schools are trying to do something different. They're trying to teach different, or they're trying to offer different programs. They're trying to offer opportunities to different types of students. What Medium does really well is allows you to contribute to what they're called channels, if you will. And these are different subject matters that are specific to different industries. Bright, which is the example that you see in front of you, is one of the leading areas for content around education on Medium. And you can submit your stories to Bright if they get submitted and approved. Medium actually distributes them to all the people that follow the Bright channel, if you will, and certainly gives an opportunity for your school to get exposure, or your teachers or potentially administrators to get bigger exposure about what your schools are doing a bit differently. Again, this is a place where you can be posting long form or short form content that can be text, video, and images, or a combination of those. And it allows you to distribute that content to a bigger audience. So if you've got a blog post and you're already sharing this content, this is another great place, like LinkedIn Pulse, and Medium is another great option to be sharing and distributing, and if you will, syndicating that content to different places. The last one that we included on sort of the new kids on the block, if you will, and this may not feel like a social network, but it certainly is part of the collective, if you will, is places like grade schools or other review-based sites. So if you're not familiar with grade schools, this is essentially a resource that parents or communities can use to find out basically reviews. It's the Yelp of schools, if you will. Parents and community members and students alike are able to come in and review and provide both positive and negatives of what's happening or potentially experiences that they've had at those schools. One thing to keep in mind, as I know there may be a few of you on the line that have struggled with potentially negative reviews that have been shared on great schools or shared on Yelp or maybe shared on Google or other review places. Is one of the key things that you want to keep in mind is always to be acknowledging whether it's a positive or negative review. Jay Baer, who's a good friend and a marketing thought leader, just recently published a book called Hug Your Haters, and he did a lot of data-based research around the way that consumers react to both positive and negative reviews. In that research, he found that when people see a negative review and they do not see at least a follow-up, regardless of if it's a positive or negative interaction, they will have a more negative reaction to that brand or that school, if you will, if that negative review is not followed up upon. So you want to be making sure that you're monitoring these places like great schools or other review sites and at least responding to those reviews. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're agreeing with those reviews, but consumers at a fundamental level believe that at least you're monitoring and responding to negative reviews. It means you're engaged. They're least likely to look at you in a negative light if you actually take a look at those reviews and respond to them rather than just simply leaving them there. Kim, I know you've got more to add on great schools.
Yeah, I just want to second what you said about monitoring, and great schools and other platforms are definitely ways to get messages out there. I think that these type of tools, folks who comment, it tends to be those who have something negative to say. Just like when a survey is sent out, you typically get those who have something negative to say to respond more quickly. However, if you're engaged and you're active and you are responding, then as Michael mentioned, people are going to read those things and take anything negative with a grain of salt. So it is really important to monitor, but not just monitor, also engage, right? Thank people for their reviews, comment when there's something that's negative, correct anything that might be incorrect, and it's your opportunity to really be active, and eventually those folks who are having positive things to say will be able to say them there as well.
Yeah, great addition, great thoughts there. Okay, so ways that you can leverage social media in different ways. We wanted to look at personal and student development first. So some ideas to leverage from a personal development perspective, whether it's for your students or whether it's for your teachers or admins alike. Twitter, although like we've talked about, is certainly not growing, it's still a great tool for exploring a wide range of possible topics. There's a lot of teachers that are sharing content on what's happening there. There's a lot of great third-party educational resources. Whether those are sort of areas where teachers can get additional learning. There's also a ton of opportunity from a real-time chat perspective. There's several different weekly chats around the educational space that you can find leveraging different hashtags, and where your teachers and administrators can participate in those chats to talk with teachers that may be well outside of their geographic radius and find out how they're addressing problems and how they may be teaching in different ways. As we've mentioned, another place to build where they can share ideas and build relationships. Tons of great chats that are scheduled on a weekly basis that may be around topics like 21st century learning or engagement or different content-specific exchanges around things like PE or math or language. There's also a ton of obviously materials that either the press or expert third parties, professors that are sharing on different topics that teachers could monitor for up-to-date or real-time things around topics that they may be talking about within the classroom, or potentially different subjects that are certainly changing on a daily or weekly basis. Another way that you can leverage Twitter is to help students connect to the real world, right? I mean, I think students sometimes get a little bit of a lack of a world view when they're, stuck in their classrooms and their communities. Twitter allows, students, whether it's monitored through parents or through teachers, to connect with experts, museums, third-party learning resources like Khan Academy, or talk to publications or journalists about different topics they may be researching within the classroom. And certainly an area for them to feel like the world isn't as small as, you know, certainly the area that they're around. It provides and gives students access to, you know, potentially students that are in different countries or different locales, and talk to them about what's happening in their classrooms. Instagram also provides, I think, a great opportunity for schools to share what they're doing in their classrooms. You can certainly post teachers can post supplemental opportunities of what's being covered in class. If students are too young for accounts, parents can certainly start up an account and review and see information that's being shared from the teacher or from the school itself. One of the things that we've heard recently from a couple parents, which I think is kind of funny, but also really appropriate in today's you know, sort of day and age where kids are buried in their phones, is parents are often asking at the dinner table, or when they get 5 seconds to ask their kids in their busy days, you know, what happened at school today? And a lot of parents are almost foregoing that question because they can see from what the school is sharing and what those teachers are sharing in the classroom. They can kind of see what's happening and then engage their child and be like, hey, I saw you did this at school today, or I saw the school did this, how was that? One other really great example that we saw when we were doing some research around how different schools are leveraging Instagram is from a guy named Jim Asher, who's a teacher out of DC. And one of his favorite uses is when he's teaching social studies, he had students write a haiku about the colonial period in the US. He then took videos of the artwork and the haiku itself while the students read their haikus and posted them to Instagram, tagging their parents or tagging their profiles so that they could share that content on Instagram. Now, we were actually doing this presentation at the Ohio Charter Schools Conference a few days ago, or just last week, I should say. And one of the questions came around with like photo releases and video releases around students. This is certainly something you're going to have to address, whether it's within your admissions paperwork or within specific photo releases, but it's something that some schools really struggle with. So while these ideas can be really interesting, sometimes they simply don't work for your particular school because you don't have the photo releases, or because you've got, you know, that parent or student that doesn't want to be seen on these networks. So you've got to be mindful of those things as well. So from an engagement perspective, you know, one of the things that we talked about when we were looking at Twitter is just this lack of engagement that's happening with social media. You know, social media has a word in it that is supposed to inherently mean that we are having a conversation between two people or two potential entities, right? It is called social as media, right? We are supposed to be social. And one of the things that we often see is that all of those schools are posting a lot of content. They're not engaging with their peer network. They're not engaging with legislators. They're not engaging with the community that's out there to try and build connections and leverage those relationships to spread their content. So I wanted to give you some idea of how you can leverage you know, your social media channels to really engage with people and foster the community and foster the content that you're sharing out there. Keep in mind that this is really a two-way conversation, right? So you can share updates of what students are happening in the classroom, you know, keep families more engaged with what's happening, you know, potentially follow families that have students in the school and, you know, see what they're doing outside of the classroom. One of the other interesting ways that we've seen a lot of schools leverage social media is to participate in a lot of the global trends that are happening out there. So, of course, one of the most interesting, you know, internet trends right now is this mannequin challenge, or if you think back a few months back to or a year at this point, the ice bucket challenge. This is an example of what Highmark is doing at their school to just really participate in some of the global activities that are happening. And you can see Ms. Huppaker's advisory class mannequin challenge. And this has got 388 views. You know, to have that sort of viewership and reach for a school is certainly, I think, a really interesting opportunity. So being able to engage with what's happening with different internet memes and different trends that are out there, I think, is really interesting for schools to take advantage of. Make sure that you're always tying engagement to a goal, right? You never want to set out and do social media just to do social media, right? That's not a path forward. You want to make sure you're trying to, you know, all these activities, because you're going to be spending time and resources and potentially money to leverage these platforms, is tie it to a goal, right? Make sure is it related to student enrollment and retention, right? Are you using social media to try and get your message out there and seeing if that has an impact on potential new students that are coming to the school? Maybe it's teacher development, right? Maybe you want to encourage teachers to get on this network and find 1 to 2 pieces of content on social either a week or a month that can help help further opportunities in different learning strategies that are within the classroom itself. Certainly fundraising is one way to leverage it as you begin to build out your following, and school awareness, right? Just being aware, anytime there's a year zero or year one school, there's always a lack of awareness for that school. And rather than having to, go knock on doors and put flyers out or talk to people, that's certainly something you have to do. Social is one way to generate buzz around a school and share the mission and vision of what your school is going to be even before it opens. Keep in mind that with any of, sorry, go ahead, Kim.
I just wanted to add, there have been a couple questions. One, I think, is important to add here. We're talking about, social media and what to focus on and the importance of social. And one of the questions is around investing resources. So, should you focus more of your resources on social media rather than building out your website? And the answer to that is, depends on what budget you have, but website is really the world, the world can see into your school. It's the place where everyone is going to go. And so if you have even a minimal budget to get up a site, a page, something, that's where you want to drive people. So while you're developing engagement on social media, if you don't have a website, then you don't have anywhere for people to go to get more. So I just wanted to address that. Michael, if you want to add on to that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. We actually have a slide a little bit later, but I will say that, one of the things you've got to realize is that on any of these social networks, they could go away in a heartbeat, right? Just because Facebook's here today doesn't mean that it's going to be here tomorrow. So if you're investing all these time and resources into these places, you have to keep in mind you don't own that content per se. It's when you put it into the ecosystem on Twitter or on Facebook, you're putting it out there, but those could go away at any point. So what we encourage schools to do is you've got to have that website. That's your home base, as we like to call it. That's where you will be, that's a good place to keep all that great content that you're sharing and on your blogs or in different pages on your website so that people can see this regardless of whether they're going to an Instagram or a Facebook, right? But it's your home base. That's where you allow people to take that next step. Maybe it's fill in a contact us form or potentially pre-enroll for the school. And some schools do offer complete enrollment processes on their websites too. So the other thing to keep in mind is that from a search results perspective, right, 80% of people start their journey when they start their searching journey online, they start with a search engine, primarily Google. And yes, Google does index all the social networks from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter, but it's also indexing all of the website pages that are out there. So if you've got the opportunity to build, those search index results around your school name or potentially your school's geographic location or some point of differentiator that you're doing with your school, maybe it's an art school, right, that's in Phoenix and you're able to own, the best art school program in Phoenix search term or something along those lines. Google's going to want to return the best experience for that particular search term. And a lot of the time, I won't say 90% of the time, but a lot of the time that will be a website over some sort of social media resource. But Google's making their search results more intuitive to what's happening in the space. So they're giving people news stories, they're giving people websites, they're giving people social media profiles. And that's why it's important to at least have a presence in these places so that when people search for your school name or they're searching for a topic that your school may be sharing, that you're there in numerous different places, not just your website itself. But yes, you should be investing in your website, and just keep in mind that that's your home base that you own, that you should be building out and making sure you're sharing some of that content that you're doing in social right within your website itself. But great question. Just keep in mind that engagement comes at a cost. I think this is one of the other questions that had come through as well. This isn't like a field of dreams scenario. You can't just build it, log in, get a profile, put up your logo, and think like, oh, I'm going to have 100 followers tomorrow. That's not the way the world works anymore. The way that this works is building engagement, potentially, doing advertising, paid advertising on some of these networks to build followers. But the easiest way that you can gain followers is to engage with people, right? Reply back to them, reshare their content, retweet on Twitter, maybe reshare on Instagram, share their post on Facebook. That takes time and that takes resources, and you're going to have to find a balance of both. For startup schools, you're probably not going to have a budget or a designated person that's doing this on a regular basis, but there's a way to share these responsibilities across the school. We're going to give you some of those strategies in just a second. For those schools that are maturing and sustaining, some schools are going to have communications manager or a marketing manager that can take these tasks on. We're also going to give you a strategy of how you can leverage your students too that we've seen done from an interesting perspective. But keep in mind, all of this comes at a cost, whether it's an actual budgetary cost or whether it's the time that you're investing from just a human capital perspective. Listening, one of the things that you can do on social is listen to people. There's an opportunity to listen to peers, listen to different schools that are happening, whether those are both within your local geographic area or they may be subject matter schools that you want to see what they're doing, right? You've got an art school and you want to connect with all the arts related charter schools and see what they're doing. Certainly a place to listen to advocates, whether that's government advocates or whether that's the National Alliance or other state and local alliances that may be in your state. Parents and students, and an opportunity certainly to listen to parents of your students and listen to students themselves. What are you listening for? Potentially for feedback. What are people sharing online about you? Certainly from a risk identification, security, and bullying perspective, we've seen schools leverage social media to be able to mitigate, bullying that's happening in the schools, or, hear about something that may be happening in the school before it even happens. The opportunity to advocate or influence local individuals, whether those are government individuals, city-based individuals that may be making big financial decisions for your program. Certainly an ability to connect with students and teachers, and then also look like trends, right? What are the internet memes that are happening out there that you could tap into as a school, whether that's the mannequin challenge or something along those lines. Now, listening is hard. It takes time. So how do you make it easier on your teams? Follow people, right? That's probably the easiest way. Following people and going through your stream on a daily basis. You can create lists and groups. There are the ability to do that on Twitter. There's a way to create groups on Facebook. There's a way to create groups on most of these social platforms so that you can listen in a more strategic way rather than having to consume everything that's happening. Hashtags are also an important area where you can listen. Certainly you can listen around the charter schools hashtag, around potentially local charter issues. A lot of the state and legislative issues, such as in California, we had SB 51 last year, I believe was related to charter schools, although it could be another bill that I'm blanking on. But most of the bills that are going through local and state-based congressional areas will have a hashtag where people are talking about them. That's an opportunity for your school to advocate on behalf of that bill as well. Now, to make listening easier, we have a couple tools and ways that you can manage this. So in the next few slides, we've got just a couple tools that you can take advantage of that will help your schools actually listen and engage in a much easier way. The first one is Hootsuite. This is a paid, both a free and then a paid version of this platform. What Hootsuite allows you to do is you're seeing a screenshot from their iPhone app. They do have an Android one too, and from a web browser. What Hootsuite allows you to do within the free platform is have up to 3 accounts so that you can manage your Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram all within one dashboard, rather than having to uniquely go to every single social network. So you can create content, schedule it, post it, good to go, it all manages itself. You can see who's talking about you, you can follow hashtags, you can follow groups of individuals. It's a really great tool to use. If you need more than 3 accounts, it's a nominal fee per month, and that's Hootsuite. You just go to hootsuite.com if you're looking to take a look at that. It's a really great way. The mobile app allows you to post photos and do all these different things that you could do in the individual apps, but this is just an easier way for you to do it all within one place and really get an idea of what's happening at an aggregate perspective versus having to go log into each one of these places. Another app that's out there is called Buffer app. This is one that we use at B&H as well as for different clients. It's very similar to Hootsuite in the sense that you can have different accounts. You can have LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all these different accounts. Just as a side note, Snapchat's not integrated into any of these yet, but I'm sure that's coming. But what I love about Buffer app is it gets to know via machine learning, right? So there's some big old computer that sits behind it in the cloud that learns when people engage with your content most. And then you don't have to guess when content should be shared. You just buffer it, essentially. They use as a verb. You buffer something. You buffer a piece of content to Facebook, you buffer it to Twitter, and what it will do, it will post it at the time where you see the best engagement. So that if that's at 9:46 a.m., you press buffer, they'll get an algorithm going, and they'll decide when the right time to post that piece of content. So it makes, kind of takes some of that guesswork out as well. This is also a free platform for 3 accounts. The minute you want your 4th, you've got to pay a nominal fee per month. I think it starts at about $9 per month and goes up from there. The last tool that we wanted to show you was Canva. We think Canva is just a really super simple, both photo editing and sort of graphic editing tool. You know, a lot of schools struggle with having to, you know, pay for the likes of all this software that they may need to create, you know, images and quotations and different things that they're sharing within social media. Well, Canva takes the guesswork out of this process. You don't need any Photoshop skills. You need very little technical skills, if at any. You just need a browser and a Canva account, which there is a free one as well as a paid version that gets you access to different things. But you can design a piece of content that you can spit out. It spits out the Facebook version, the Twitter version, the Instagram version. So it takes the guesswork out of what you need to actually create. If you've got pictures of images that you want to overlay your logo, or put a little quote from a teacher, maybe it's a picture of a teacher talking and you want to put a quote behind it or something along those lines, or maybe it's MLK Day and you want to have a Martin Luther King quote that you share. This is a way you could have an image of a student, overlay that text, spit it out of Canva, and it's ready to go for all those different social networks. Super simple tool. If you can use Microsoft Word, which I'm guessing 100% of you can do, then you can use Canva. This is a really simple photo editing tool, and we really love it just because of just how simple and easy it is to use. And like I said, it's free too.
So I just wanted to go back and add in something around the listening piece before we move on to best practices. So one of the things that I think is really important in terms of listening is that you can follow some of the conversations that are going on in your community that might be negative towards charter schools. I think that's really valuable to understand what the misperceptions are in the community that your school is located, so that you can actually actively answer those questions before they may be asked of you at the school. So in advance of someone coming to school or having it elevated into the more traditional news media, you can be listening to what's going on in the community, and you can be answering or giving information that will open up a conversation versus having it bubble up and have some negative press that happens around charter schools or around your school.
Yeah, that's a really great addition. So some best practices to keep in mind as you start to really engage and look at different opportunities within social. As that question that we just teed up a second ago, number one, you need a hub for this content. You need a place when someone actually engages with your content on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You need a place to send them, right? What's the next action? What's step 2 to get to know your school? And that's your website. So some things to keep in mind for different website builders that are out there. There's a couple great ones. We're not suggesting these are the best. We're not suggesting they're the worst. These are just ones that we've seen schools leverage really, really well. The first of which is Squarespace. A second option is WordPress. The third one is Wix. Any one of these have very much like a WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get editor, that allows you to design your website to match your brand standards. All of them also offer what are called responsive or mobile optimized websites. It's an important thing for Google these days. Google wants to see that you not only have a desktop version of your site, but have a website that works very well from a mobile perspective. Again, Squarespace, WordPress, and Wix, just 3 recommendations, not saying these are the best or the worst. These are just 3 easy tools that allow you to do some really great things from a website builder perspective. Some of these are free, some of them are paid for. You just have to determine your budget and what you're willing to spend in order to determine the different one you'd like to select. So some important questions to ask around your website. Design. What does the layout look like? How are you using text and color used, and how you incorporate visuals? You want to try and you want to match your brand identity so that your website feels like your school, right? If your school has a lighthearted, comical attitude, then that should come through with the colors and the visuals and the text. Innovation. Does it look like a website? Does it look like a template, right? Or have you made it original? Any one of those platforms will allow you to select a template that you like as a design and then customize it to the hilt. From fonts to images to where the logo goes, how big the logo is. So make it, bringing your brand to life through those opportunities. Content. Is it fresh and interesting? Does it get updated regularly? One of the things that Google looks for is websites that have fresh and updated content. So this idea of just propping up your website and not doing anything with it on a regular basis is something you need to change. You need to be adding fresh new content, taking a look at it on a regular basis, whether that's every 30 days or every 60 days, to make sure that the content is fresh, it's relative, it speaks how you want to be spoken to. from a technology perspective, is it fast? This is the key question that you're going to want to look at. We see a lot of schools struggle with this very issue because you're using probably a really inexpensive, hosting account, and I don't want to like say GoDaddy because a lot of people are on GoDaddy, but if you're paying the $6.95 per month GoDaddy account, you're probably potentially losing search results because your site doesn't load as fast as possible. Google wants sites to load quickly these days because they want to give their end user the best experience possible. If your site is slow, they are going to ding you from a search results perspective, meaning that a school that you potentially compete against could get served higher than you in the search results if their website is faster. So making sure does the page load promptly. There are a couple key ways that you can do that. One of them is to just Google page speed. If you go onto Google, put in the word page speed, you can actually find a tool that will give you a free assessment of your website to see just how fast it is. Interactivity. Are you presenting all the different types of content that people like to see these days? Text, video, photos, hyperlinks, all of those things, so that it's a rich experience for the user. And the last one is ease of use. Is it easy to navigate, and can you perform things like a search function? Google looks for these things. Google is very, very intelligent when they're scraping your website. They know how things are organized. They see how the folder structure of the website looks like. These are all things that matter for your website, as well as for your #1 audience for your website, which is Google itself. Keep in mind, your website isn't social media is not a dumping ground. Don't just post everything. Be selective of what you're posting, right? Not everything deserves to be everywhere. You wouldn't take the pretty Instagram picture and put it in Snapchat video. That's not what Snapchat's for, right? Snapchat's for those quick 15-second little videos. Instagram stories are for those quick 15-second videos, right? If you're doing a beautiful image of your school or a new facility or a new teacher or the first day of school as kids are running in the front door and you've made a photo filter, that's for Instagram, right? Put the content where the content is meant to be. And also make sure you're customizing it for each platform. There's really nothing more annoying and lazy, if you will, if you take one piece of content and just share it everywhere. Make sure it's being shared in the right place. Number 3, quality over quantity. We often get questions around how often do you post or should we post? There's really no right answer. This depends on your audience. But try and do one of 3 things in anything that you post. Use these as sort of the gatekeeper of, should I post this? Does it educate? Does it connect to my audience? Or does it raise money, right? Does it help us further our mission? Does it educate the community? Does it connect us with parents and students? If any piece of content does that for you, then it's probably worthy of being put on social media. And then be conscious that you share as much as you comment, right? This is an engagement platform. Social should be social. Number 4 is leverage your best asset. That's your students, right? Consider potentially putting together what's called a student advocacy group. Georgetown did a really good example of this, and we've seen other schools, even charter schools, starting to leverage this idea. They gave students tools, whether it was like a GoPro or an iPhone, and they asked for 1 piece of content per month, and then they leveraged those pieces of content to create a whole website and share that content within social media. And what you will see is the example of what they're calling Georgetown Stories. Now, yes, this is a university, but if you consider the investment, a $200 GoPro, a $150 iPod that can record video, you ask students for 1 piece of content a month, you could be getting things like this that students really like to engage with. So think about different opportunities that you could be creating that content with. So we wanted to leave you with just a couple key examples of what charter schools are doing in this space, just to give you an idea of what other schools are doing on Instagram or Twitter. We showed you the Success Academy video. We think this is a really great example of that high quality, high production value video. Just keep in mind that this is not an inexpensive exercise, but one of the key things to think about is just think of when you make these types of investments, where all those videos can go, right? This is a 2.5-minute video on YouTube. Arguably, people are going to watch this because these students are cute as ever, and they have some really good stories of why they came to Success Academies and what they've experienced. But Success Academies can not only just leverage this on YouTube, they can take it to other places such as Instagram. They can take it to Snapchat. They can take 30s and 45-second snippets and share it in different places. They can also use it as if they get an email or an outreach from a parent that says, hey, I'm looking, my student has X, Y, and Z, have you had this experience? They can take these stories and split them up into individual smaller pieces of content and use them in different places. So when you're thinking about, hey, we want to produce this really great video, think of all the different ways you can do to merchandise it across different social networks, not just potentially that one that you may be designing it for. You can also do animated or sketched content. This is a great example from great schools. Sorry to use great for great, but maybe you don't have the students that want to participate in a video, or you don't have the teachers that want to do that. Well, you could be doing something from a sketch perspective. This example looks at what is a charter school, the idea of that question, how do you answer that correctly? Maybe your school's got a really unique position that you can talk about that position and sketch these out. A great way to get these types of videos, work with local college students or local design students that could help you bring these assets and these types of videos together. Here's an example again of those micro content, or those smaller stories that we're seeing on Instagram stories or Snapchat. This example is the mannequin challenge from Highmark Charter School, right? You don't have to be sharing really well-produced video. This is just video from an iPhone, right? This is from a teacher or an admin's iPhone. You don't have to be doing the Success Academies type of quality work if you don't have the resources and the budget to do it. The iPhone 7 has just as good as camera as like a $4,000 video camera. And you've got great technology in your hands, in your students and teachers and your admin's hands that can create these types of videos really easily. Here's another example of that from Columbus Prep, although it makes me kind of worry about what's actually happening in this video with all these students going crazy, having fun and playing music. If you actually heard the audio, you might have a headache in a few minutes because there's just this cacophony of sounds that's happening. But they're showing off what's happening in their school on a Friday dance day. One of the ways that you can share really interesting content about your school is what's called infographics. Infographics are essentially, if you will, images that show off different stats or different ways of producing data that may be happening, results around your school. So maybe you've got a 90% response rate or 90% positivity score from parents, or maybe 7 out of your 10 students go to college. You can create these infographics really easy using platforms like Canva. What's great about these things is you can then break them apart and share them in different social channels, right? You could share them to Instagram, you could share them to Twitter and Facebook, and break them into individual posts versus just being one big infographic. But it could be a big printed piece that you share with parents or potential students and prospective parents that may be coming to your school to check out and find out more. So just to wrap up, we appreciate your time today. We apologize for the technical issues. I think GoToWebinar is having some issues this morning. As Kim and I mentioned, we are going to be posting these slides as well as the video that we did get within the next hour or so. We'll send you an email. If you have any questions, all of our contact information is right there, including our personal contact phone number. We would be more than happy to answer a couple questions now. If you don't want one answered or something pops up in the future, please feel free to outreach to either one of us or both of us, and we'll take the time to respond to you. I'm going to let Kim wrap it up for the day.
Yes, we do have a few questions. I think we have a couple minutes to get to some of these. The first one we'll tackle here is around how do charter leader marketers, how do you pitch social media and the importance of social media when you get pushback from the school administration, right? So you have a school administration that is looking at handing out flyers and they want to focus on grassroots efforts. And so we see that quite often. I think that there's a couple of different things there. One, if the school leadership is really looking at grassroots efforts, that's what social media is all about, right? It'll take a little education, pull together some stats on the numbers of how many people are on social media. Could you, how can you connect the dots between social and what the school thinks is grassroots? So I think that, if it's a grassroots level effort, that's where social can really, really help. I think that there is hesitancy sometimes at the administration level that, hey, once we get out there, there's going to be, there could be negative impacts. So you just want to mitigate that by talking about the positives, and maybe you're not diving into all social media at one time. Maybe you're saying, hey, let's do a test and let's set up a Facebook page. Let's see how that goes and really monitor and showcase the successes that you have. Michael, do you have anything to add there?
No, nothing to add. I think it's a great point. If you look at, some of the things that have come out of the last election cycle in terms of grassroots efforts, social is the place to do that. I think, you, regardless if you're a charter school or you're a brand, you're constantly facing pushback about why you should be in these places. I think taking a deck like this, or, maybe talking to us offline about what stats you could take to your board to show that This is where people are engaging with information. This is where they find out, what is available in their community. And because all of it's being indexed by Google, and 80% of people's searches, when they're looking and making a buying decision or a purchase decision, which is what a school is, that's still a buying decision in a parent's mind, right? They're buying a place where they want to put their children. They're making a decision that involves potentially multiple different resources. If you aren't there as a school, that is a red flag to people. If you're going to go buy a bike and that bike company is not online, that's a red flag for you as a human being when you're making that bike purchase. It's the same when parents are looking to make a decision around where they're sending your schools. If your school isn't online and sharing content, it's a red flag for those parents.
Yeah. So another question came in that I think is related to what we're talking about. So it's around parent-teacher organizations and how the parent-teacher groups are creating their own social media pages on Facebook or other platforms so that they can, have discussions. I think this is a perfect for talking to the school administration about the fact that if there is no vehicle available for the community to have conversations, people are going to create their own. So in many cases, I've seen it in a lot of different instances. At my son's own school, the parent-teacher organization set up their own Facebook page, right? So the school may think that that is bad, right? There's conversations that are happening that are in a private space just for those families that are part of that school community. I would flip that around. It actually isn't bad, right? But the school, the administrators and the community is one community. So participate in that conversation, right? You can't tell the parent-teacher organization not to have their own community, but the reasons why they're setting up a community is because there isn't one that already exists, or there's one that exists that isn't readily available. So be a part of that conversation. And that's another way that the school can actually become part of the conversation by participating. In terms of monitoring their pages, that means being part of that community. So, like I mentioned, my son's parent-teacher school page, the school is part of that conversation. They link into that conversation. So, if there is a tenuous situation between the parent-teacher organization and the school, that's actually something that needs to be repaired before you are even looking at building a community. So in most instances,
Agreed.
the parent-teacher group is more than happy to have a conversation and participate with the school admin.
I think the thing to realize is these conversations were always happening. They're just in a different forum now, right? Parents were getting together and having coffee or tea, or they were having their, lunch, right? People were getting together and having these conversations regardless of whether they were happening online, but it certainly offers an opportunity for you as a school to jump into that conversation or potentially know that at least those conversations are happening easier than you did before, right? These conversations were happening face-to-face. Now they're just happening in a different medium. There's an additional question that I think is really that I want to address, that it said, our charter school org posts photos, videos, challenges, events regularly, but we can't seem to get many likes or shares. Any advice for how to get more interest in our content? I have a couple key tactics that you can use. Hashtags and tagging are the easiest way to drive engagement on areas where you may be lacking that opportunity and not getting as many likes and shares. Now, how do you do that? From a hashtag perspective, go out and see what other charter schools are looking. There is, hashtag charter school, hashtag charter schools. All the states have specific charter school hashtags, like California is CA charter schools, Arizona is AZ charter schools. Find out what that list is. You make that list in like a notes app on your phone so that you can do a cut, copy, and paste every single time that you post a piece of content. And then you don't have to be doing the hashtags every single time. You just go to the note, copy the whole piece of text, use it, put it in the comment, and then it's shared. Also, if you put anything that is related to your school that's about maybe the way that you're educating or what's happening in your school, tag the National Alliance, tag the State Alliance, tag the government officials that support charter schools, because their social media teams are looking for more content to share, and they often don't see it because all of these social networks are driven by algorithms. So if you tag them, they will see that tag, they may take your piece of content and reshare it. So tag people and use hashtags appropriately and make it easier for yourself by creating that list of hashtags and hopping back and forth between your notes app to do that cut, copy, and paste and throw it in. Just one really quick tactic for that. I want to be mindful of time. A lot of you are sticking around. We have almost 80 of you still here, so I think there are just a couple additional questions.
A few more questions. So one that's on here that I think is useful to address, it's come up a couple times. So, how do you deal with parents who do not want their children to participate or to be shown or viewed in video or photographs? I think that's really a critical thing to take into consideration. So someone earlier, mentioned legal issues around, having kids participate. And every school, and I'm imagining most of you on this call, your schools have release forms that are signed as part of going to the school or attending the school. Now, you have to be mindful. There are reasons why parents won't want their kids to participate, having their imagery or being in video, and you have to honor that. So there is some monitoring that you will need to do to make sure that those kids are not part of any imagery or video. But so for photographs, for example, you can blur a student's face if they're part of an image that they can't be part of, or you can doctor the photo if you know how to use Photoshop or other kinds of imagery for that. So I think that you do need to be mindful of that. You do need to make sure that your school has the proper release forms, and typically application forms include the release. If parents are signing that, then you won't have an issue. Now, if it's more about parents not wanting their kids to participate in social media, that's a different question. We don't see that as often. Most kids are participating, and so it's really going to where they are, right? It's similar to the parent-teacher organization. A lot of younger kids are using text message or they're using Snapchat. So you really need to look at how the students are using social and how can you participate in that manner.
Yeah, I also would just suggest that think about things that don't require students to be in the content. Photos of teachers, photo administrators, photo of facilities, photos of work that's being done, as in like actual classroom work. Photos of the classroom that, don't show students' faces is perfectly fine, by the way. It gets around that issue. Depending on the state, you may want to go state by state on that. But there are 15 ways till Sunday to get around that issue of showing faces. Granted, it is not going to be as engaging, and it may not get as many comments and likes as the cute faces and the great stories that come from students, because those are your best advocates in the world. But it at least gives you a presence, and having that presence can at least help people make those decisions as to where they may be sending their kids.
Yeah. So another question is about year zero schools, so startup schools. Obviously, before you open your doors, you don't have any students, right? So how do we, year zero schools, how do we incorporate any imagery that might be relevant for the audiences that you're trying to attract on social media? That's a great question. So, you don't need those images right away. If you have them, great. But you can show images of your school to be, right? If you have a facility, you can show your classroom. You can talk about the programs. You can create some infographics that talk about your programs or what you're trying to accomplish. You can focus on your mission. So there's a lot of things that you can talk about, and you can use imagery from your specific community. It doesn't necessarily have to focus on the students per se.
Yeah. There are two additional questions that I think are really interesting for this conversation that are related. What's your take on advertising at movie theaters, and is it better to advertise your school on social media versus billboards or digital billboards? These are two great questions. Both billboards as well as ads that are in movie theaters are very geo-targeted, right? If your school's near a billboard, it offers you an opportunity to do a very specific geo-targeted ad that's physical, that certainly offers opportunities. Now, the question becomes how are you tracking the conversions from that ad, right? Maybe it is you're asking the questionnaire on enrollment, how did you hear about us? And it's a self-reporting thing. Maybe it's just judging foot traffic. Maybe it's about putting a unique URL or landing page for that billboard. I will only say this. All of the social media opportunities, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and soon to be Snapchat, all of them allow you incredible geographic targeting abilities as well as demographic opportunities. So just to give you an idea, I can target someone that drove around my zip code in the last 5 minutes on Facebook. I can target that same person who is 45 and has 2 kids who may be looking at different schools on the web. Facebook and a lot of the networks offer these incredible targeting opportunities that you cannot get from a billboard. You can't guarantee that everyone's that's driving past a billboard has got a student or a potential person that they can put in your school, or really gives a care to look at that billboard at the end of the day. But you can guarantee that your ads get in front of these people in really interesting ways on social media. So just think of the targeting opportunities that you have. I can't make a judgment call for which one is more effective or not, because that involves what does the creative look like? What does the landing page that you're sending people look like? How do you measure that billboard or that movie theater ad? But what I can tell you is that these are areas where if you've got ad dollars that are being used offline, you can take them and test them online in some of the new social media networks because of the incredible targeting opportunities that these networks offer, better than what you can get in almost every other advertising vehicle that is on the market today.
Yeah, I would add to what Michael's saying about the advertising piece. Another thing to think about is that once you commit to doing billboards or movie theater ads, you're committed, right? There's no deciding after the first run that, oh, we didn't see a bump, and so we're just going to cancel the rest. With the digital marketing that you have available to you, you can test things and do as you go. You don't have to commit a lump sum of money out of the gate. It's a very different way or very different approach to advertising when you're looking at digital advertising, because you can get very immediate analytics and you can change course after a period of time, right? So when you have a movie theater ad, once that ad has been shown for a week, it's done. Yeah, it's done. But you've already purchased that, and there's no changing. With billboards, to buy one billboard is very expensive. You get a price cut when you purchase additional billboard time, meaning your billboard is up for a longer period of time, but you still can't cancel. And it's very hard to track billboard, the analytics around billboard use. Very, very difficult to do that unless it's part of a broader campaign that you can actually track. So I think, for charters, especially charter schools that are in the earlier phases of their growth, right, between 1 and 4 years, the more traditional advertising approaches, you may not yield what you think that you will, and it's costly, versus digital marketing where advertising is more approachable. You may need to get a specialist to help you, but you can actually test across lots of different vehicles digitally and pay less money.
Totally agree. It's such a really good point that I did not think of right off the top of my head. Well, I think we're out of questions, are we not?
I believe we are. Again, thanks everyone for attending. This is really great. Lots and lots of questions. Please do email either of us if you would like to get additional questions answered. Like Michael said, the presentation is going to be available later today. You'll get an email with links. You'll be able to watch back the recording. You'll also be able to download the presentation deck. And we really appreciate those who stayed on to get their questions answered, and it's been a really good webinar.
Yeah, incredible, and thank you to the 70 of you who stuck around for an extra 15 minutes to hear these questions. Kim and I sincerely appreciate your time and all the positive comments that you've sent our way. Thanks for making the time for us, and as she mentioned, we'll get the content out to you as soon as possible today so you can have it and distribute where you'd like to take it. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.